Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I'm Kelli Thompson. I'm a women's leadership coach, a speaker, and an author. My first book is coming out this fall. It's called Closing the Confidence Gap: How to Boost Your Peace, Your Potential, and Your Paycheck. And today I'm actually going to share a small, tiny excerpt of a story that's actually in the book. And, this might be a taboo topic. We don't talk a lot about infertility on social media. And for those of you listening to me on LinkedIn today, like it's definitely not something that we talk about, right? On social media, especially on LinkedIn and even in the workplace, which is something that I directly want to address today because, some folks might be listening to this or paying attention and thinking that it's taboo and it's uncomfortable. Yep, it is. And we're going to dig in and we're going to talk about it because I think one of the things that's really important about sharing these stories and advocating is that when we can start to share our stories, there's less shame and there's less silence. And, the more that there's shame and silence around things, like it just really destroys not only our mental health, but our confidence. And that has ripple effects, not only at work, but in our families as well. So I want to share with you three things. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you this week, because it is National Infertility Awareness Week, this entire week. This is something that is heavily advocated by not only the Society for Reproductive Management, but also from resolve.org, which is a huge advocate for infertility rights and treatments and et cetera, et cetera. So I want to share with you my story. I want to share with you some things that are helpful to say to somebody who, or supportive to say to somebody who's maybe struggling with infertility. And then I want to share some things that maybe aren't so helpful. I know that's like always a really big worry. Like I don't want to say the wrong thing. And so if you have questions about any of this, like I realize how tender this topic is, but really like I'm happy to talk about any of it. Like nothing's off limits. That's why I'm here. This is why I'm talking about it, because I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to when I was going through it. And then the last thing is I want to talk about what employers can do to help support women and their partners at work. And I think this is really important, is that this is not just a women's issue. This is a family issue. This affects men too. And that's really important to keep that in mind, is that this is not just a women's topic. So first and foremost, my story. So some of you who have followed me for some time may, or maybe you don't know that I actually have a 16-year-old daughter. So when I got married to my first husband, I got pregnant right away, no complications. Like the pregnancy was easy, it was exciting, and boop, done. Like I was like, oh, this is easy. Like I think everybody just has it this easy. And so I was wrong. I actually got pregnant again when she was about 9 months old, and that was a shock for sure. And I actually miscarried at 15 weeks. And, we didn't at the time have the money to pay for the genetic testing, so we don't know why. And then I got pregnant again a few years later, and I miscarried at about 8 weeks. And then I got pregnant about a year later again, and I actually was at work. And all of a sudden felt this, knew I was pregnant, felt this horrible pain on my right side. And I hadn't told anybody I was pregnant, but I thought I was going to pass out. And so I go to my colleague, who was the only one on the floor working with me that day. And I'm like, okay, listen, this is a lot of information, but I'm pregnant and I'm having this pain. I feel I'm going to pass out. She's like, oh my gosh, I'll take you to the hospital. Of course, me and all my pride, I'm like, oh no, I'll drive myself. Drove myself, to which I didn't know if it was like appendicitis. I don't know what side my appendix is on, And I get there and I discover that the pregnancy is ectopic, which means that it was in my fallopian tube, which essentially means that it's not a viable pregnancy. A pregnancy can't grow there because your tube will burst and then it can kill the mother and then, of course, the baby too. So, unfortunately, that one had to be medically ended because neither I would survive nor the baby would survive that thing. And so, actually at that point we were that was really traumatizing. And I was like, you know what, I think we're just done. I actually ended up, my first husband and I got divorced. And then when I fast forward this would have been actually 6 years later, I met my second husband. I thought our luck would change. I thought, you know what, maybe that was just divine intervention. Maybe it wasn't meant to be, right? I'm trying to like find a reason for all of that. And so I guess I just kind of felt convinced that my new husband and I would not have any problems. And I guess maybe I thought that because my husband does not have kids of his own. And so, we really wanted to, try to have a family together. One, because I would like more, and two, he would obviously he wants children of his own. And so we thought, oh, we'll have no problems. It'll be fine. So flash forward 6 months, I'm actually can't get pregnant. They run all the tests. Everything looks fine. And so we try IUI, that doesn't work. And so we're like, all right, given my age at the time, which I believe was 38, almost 39 when we started, we proceeded pretty quickly to IVF just because of my advanced maternal age, or which they call a geriatric pregnancy. So, so yeah, we went forward with IVF. And to be honest, the only reason we did IVF was because my husband had infertility insurance through his employer, which is Wells Fargo. So for those of you who are looking for great employers that offer for infertility insurance, you can name them below. I think that would be a great resource for anyone listening. And of course, Wells Fargo was one that was very generous. And so we had the money through insurance to pay for IVF, which can cost out of pocket anywhere between $25,000 to $50,000, depending on how many rounds you're doing. It is the only disease, one of the only diseases, I'm not a medical professional, that is not covered by insurance. And I think sometimes there's this stigma that people use IVF to create designer babies or choose the gender, and that's just not true. I mean, infertility is, it happens to 1 in 8 women. It is as common as type 2 diabetes, breast cancer. And yet it's something that we don't talk a lot about at work, but yet it impacts so many couples. And so we went through IVF the first round. It did not produce viable embryos. And then we went through a second round of IVF and we got 2 embryos, which we were really excited about. And they were both genetically normal. The first one did not have any genetically normal embryos. They wouldn't have been compatible with life. And so the second time around, we got 2 and we were ecstatic. And so, then the pandemic hits in 2020. All of our, everybody's joking about a baby boom. We weren't, because all of our fertility treatments were delayed due to the pandemic. We could finally get in May of 2020 and have them transferred. And I got pregnant. I was really excited. But then I miscarried again a week later. Again, we don't know why, right? The embryo was normal. There's no reason. I think that's the thing sometimes that's really frustrating sometimes with people who struggle with infertility. Sometimes there are reasons that couples have on why they can't get pregnant. But sometimes there's cases like mine, and give me a heart or a like if this is you out there, where they're unexplained. And that's really, really, really hard, because I think we want to fix it. I want a reason and then I can fix it. But there was nothing. They ran all the tests they could possibly run, and there was just never a reason. So then we thought, okay, well, we have 1 more embryo left. We transferred that one in September of 2020. And unfortunately, that one didn't stick. And so, we thought we were done. I just, we really had to trust ourselves and our gut that, doing another round of IVF just wasn't for us. It's very emotionally taxing, because it requires you to, take shots at very specific time intervals, mix medicines, plus all the hormonal effects, and really trying to do this, as any woman and her partner would know, while having a career, is really disruptive. And not only mentally, physically, emotionally. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it that we don't talk about. Shockingly, in 2021, I actually got pregnant on my own in March of 2021. And then only to find out I miscarried about a week later. So we don't know all the reasons. We don't know why. We've come to accept that, kids are not in the card for us. And that can be really hard because, we both had a small Midwestern town upbringing. And depending on your culture or family of origin, sometimes marriages can be, their success is defined on, how many kids do you have? Or do you have kids, right? Lots of times when we're married, people are like, oh, when are you going to have kids? And I think that that's a cultural thing that we don't talk about a lot. And so that's a little bit about my story. Some people have commented on social media when I've shared this, that my story doesn't have a happy ending. But I think it's important for us to really kind of define how we define happy endings, right? And sometimes there's lots of different ways in which you can have happy endings. Some result in successful IVF cycles that produce kids and some don't. So why are we talking about this at work? I hope that maybe I've given you a clearer picture of not only the physical toll that this can take on your body through having to time medicines precisely. Like if you have to take your shot at the same time every day so that your hormones work, like hormones don't care if you're in a meeting. They don't care if you're meeting with the CEO at that time. They don't care if you have a client. And, not only that, but just the physical toll, like they made me feel like I was on speed and then I couldn't sleep at night. So not only are you trying to function in the world with like no sleep, but you're sitting there sometimes in meetings going, okay, I have to go out for a monitoring appointment. The doctor can only get me in at 10. Crap. I'm supposed to present to a big client tomorrow. What am I going to tell my boss? I remember thinking at the time that I was an entrepreneur and I still had corporate contracts, but there were times where I had to kind of make up stories as to why I couldn't say yes to a corporate contract. Because here's the thing a lot of people don't think about is that when like heteronormative couples want to have a baby, like they can keep that process very private. Sometimes, especially now that we aren't in person, they can keep that process private until, a woman is 12, 15, even 20 weeks along, right? Especially if when we're on Zoom and we only see people from the neck up. But, if you are in a situation, a partnership, or you're a single mom by choice, a single parent by choice, there are just some things that you have to do to make this work, like go to monitoring appointments, see a fertility special, get your blood work drawn. Monitoring is monitoring everything from like how everything is happening and progressing on the inside. And there's not a lot of flexibility in those appointments. And so when you're trying to have a baby, like the privileges that like heteronormative couples get versus those who might be doing it by choice or going through IVF or assisted reproduction, like sometimes you lose a lot of that privacy that a lot of people enjoy. And that's what can make it really difficult at work is how do you have these conversations with your leader? How do you have these conversations that, oh, the reason I have a private appointment is because I have a monitoring appointment. And so I think that that's really important, for, companies to have policies around these type of things because it reduces the silence and stigma and it makes this, easier to talk about. Like I know I have a friend who works for a global telecommunications company. So Cisco is another organization that provides excellent parental and fertility benefits. And you know what? They make it safe to talk about these sorts of things. And so that way it reduces the silence, the stigma, the nerves of, oh my gosh, I have to sneak off to meet my partner in a parking lot to give a shot or go to an appointment. And it really puts a lot of undue stress and burden, not just on one parent, but both parents, because, lots of times both partners want to be present at these monitoring appointments. So to kind of land the plane here, what should employers do? And what can you do to help support someone going through infertility? I want to start with what employers can do since I'm already talking about that topic. I think it's really important to normalize this as a condition that has to be treated. And so one of the ways that can look like is if employees have private appointments on their calendars, honor them. Don't need to ask a lot of questions. I know I have a couple leaders that I work with at companies who are very supportive of these sorts of efforts. And they just kind of have a policy that if there's a private appointment on someone's calendar, we don't need to ask a lot of questions. I think the other thing that's going to be the second thing that's going to be really important as people are coming back to the office is to provide flex time only 1 or 2 hours at a time without having to take like a whole half day of PTO. So for individuals who aren't salaried and are paid hourly, sometimes to take off an hour, they have to take off actually 4 hours, like a whole half day. And so normalize, the ability to take off some flex time without having to kill an entire half or whole day of PTO. So I think flexible policies are going to be really important. It might have been a little easier while everybody was remote. And especially now that we're coming back in the office, I think this is something to consider. I would say the third thing, and this is something that, I'm part of a lot of infertility awareness groups, and it really saddens me when people want to have a family, but they feel like they can't because they can't cough up $25,000, $50,000 to do IVF. And I almost feel like, why is it a privilege of only some people who won the lottery of finding a company who would pay for infertility insurance that like they are the ones who get to, have assistance while trying to build their family. And that feels unfair to me for both partners, but there is like insurance that you can add. It's called Progeny. It's really not all that expensive. I used to be an HR person. So as somebody who used to source additional benefits, like sometimes these little extra benefits programs really don't cost as much as you think. And since we still live in a world where employers and not the government provides health insurance, I think it is, a responsibility for employers, especially employers who want to attract women in the workplace, who want to keep women in the workplace, who are looking for ways to promote moms and support moms and their families and their partners. I think this is a really good benefit add to include, which is providing infertility insurance, because 60% of women say they would leave their company to get infertility insurance. In fact, in this group that I'm a part of, I can't tell you how many women go and apply to work at Starbucks part-time, because if you work at Starbucks part-time, they'll cover you'll get infertility insurance. And yeah, I see a lot of comments here. And so if you have questions, feel free to ask them, whether you're watching live or on replay. I'm happy to ask them. I know this is a tender topic. And so this is a safe place that you can ask questions, or you can drop the name of companies who you know are supportive of these things. I think it's always important to build a list. And then I just want to leave you, like, if you know somebody who's struggling with infertility, it's always awkward. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't want to offend someone. And I think while all of these comments are well-meaning, I just want to share with you some comments that I found helpful and not helpful. And these aren't just my reflections, but these are also reflections of other individuals who've gone through this as well. So, some of the things that aren't so helpful are things like, hey, have you tried, like, yes, we've tried. Thank you. Thank you. And we've done all the research. Because we're on hormone shots, we're up till 3 a.m. and we have Googled every corner of the internet, and trust us, we've tried it all. Little things like, oh, you know what? When you'll stop stressing, it'll happen. No, that's really not how infertility works. Like, infertility is a disease that's not correlated with stress. And I can vouch for that because I wasn't stressed when I got pregnant the last time, and I still miscarried. I think a lot of people are well-meaning when they say things like this, but the other thing that really isn't all that helpful, and this comes from somebody who has a very spiritual, religious background, is when people say, God has a better plan for you. Pray for a miracle. I know that's well-meaning and intentional, but it's really all not that helpful. Even though it might be true, like, it's not helpful to hear in the moment to somebody who's really going through a lot of pain and a lot of turmoil. It just bypasses the experience. And then little things like, oh, why do you have private appointments on your calendar? It's just none of your business. And I think I heard this a lot, especially at the end when we told people that we were going to stop pursuing IVF. We'd hear things like, oh, well, you could always adopt, or have you considered a surrogate? And it's like, thank you. It's just kind of like, we have explored all options, but, it's just the well-meaning advice. I think that's the whole part of it, is advice really isn't all that helpful in these moments. Support is. So support is always more helpful than advice. So support looks like, hey, I am so sorry you were going through this. Support might look like, what can I do to support your need for flexible time? Like, this is especially if you're talking with a colleague, like, what can I do to cover you? What can I do to help? Even just little things like, hey, I'm happy to work around your schedule. I think, even sometimes just the best thing is, this must be really tough, and I just want you to know I'm here to support you. Thank you. Because you know what? Like, there's no advice or nothing you can say to make this any easier or any better. And so again, I know this probably feels like a taboo topic to talk about, but my hunch is that someone in your immediate circle has either had a miscarriage or has had to, given that there is 1 in 8 folks who experience infertility, has had to do something infertility related, whether it be have a conversation with their doctor, talk about medicine, whatever. It's probably more common than you think, but the silence and stigma just makes it really silent. And so again, I think that there's a responsibility for all of us to make this normal to talk about and have the courage to talk about it, because the more that we can share our stories, the more normal it makes it. Kind of like what is happening right now in mental health and the pandemic. It's more common to talk about it now. And when we talk about it, we can get the help we need. We can bring the attention to it that we need. And I think at the end of the day, we can really engage employers as being part of the solution, because to be honest, right now, employers are the means to most health insurance coverage today. And I think that infertility should be no exception. So Thank you for listening to my story. You are welcome to reach out to me and share your stories. Hopefully, the tips to talk with others and support others going through it were helpful. But most importantly, I think it's a conversation to start having to talk about how we can best support women and their partners at work, so that we can reduce the silence and the stigma and make people feel safe to share such a courageous story. So, thanks for joining me today. And I will be back again with you next week. I do talk about this story in my new book, Closing the Confidence Gap. And you can learn more about that at closingtheconfidencegap.com/book. And if you hop on the wait list, there's actually going to be opportunities to read my book early. So would love to hear from you. And I will see you all next Tuesday.